text, questions? To submit a question, select the Q&A icon from your menu bar and type your question in the box. The moderator will read your question and direct it to the correct speaker. Please note, similar questions may be combined.
If you've had any questions throughout the award, please use that kind of Q&A box. But as you submit some questions, we will start with a bit of a panel between myself and two guest REDI awardees. Dr. Daniel Barron, who's the Director of Pain Intervention and Digital Research Programs at Brigham Women's Hospital and a faculty at Harvard University, who is a REDI K01 awardee, and Dr. Nalika Gunaratne, who is the Associate Professor of Medicine with focus on geriatrics at the University of Pennsylvania and a REDI R25 awardee, who has kind of some deep expertise around small business training. And with that, if the two of them don't mind turning their cameras on, and we could start with just some brief background and about yourself and kind of a little bit about what you do. If Dr. Gunaratne wants to go first.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Josh?
Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for the honor of being invited to this event, and it's just really very encouraging, the attendance and the enthusiasm for this. That was a really helpful summary. So my name's Nalika Gunaratne, and I'm a associate professor of medicine, and I work in geriatrics and sleep disorders. And I am very interested in the biomedical entrepreneurship space. I've been involved with several NIH small business grants, including some that have been funded by NIA. And I think it's just really very exciting to explore the opportunity to take the research ideas we have and really get them to the patients through a viable commercialization plan. I often feel like that's a missing piece in this puzzle that we live in of American healthcare. We are, so focused on publications and impact factor, and that's all well and good, and I respect that quite a bit. But at the end of the day, nothing will benefit a patient unless there's a viable business plan around it, fundamentally. And so I think it's really great that these are being explored in detail through these kind of mechanisms. My area of interest is on the R25 kind of training side of this, in that I help run the I2Seed program. I put the name of the program in next to my name, and if any of you are interested, feel free to reach out or just do a search for I2Seed. This program is an NIA-funded R25 REDI program, which is about teaching biomedical entrepreneurship skills and to people who are currently trainees, and I'm happy to explain more about the program later. I've also had the good fortune of being able to chair some study sections that are related to the REDI program. It's really been very interesting and really wonderful to kind of see the interest and support. And then I've also written an ebook on biomedical entrepreneurship. So that's kind of an introduction about myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Barron?
Yeah, my name is Daniel Barron. I'm trained in psychiatry, and I'm a pain physician by way of fellowship in Boston here. And I was interested in the REDI K01 award because it was really speaking to what I was feeling in terms of my career. Like, I had published a few papers and had tried to develop biomarkers for seizure onset zone, which is what my grad school was focused on. And I became interested in pain and moving my research in that direction, but I didn't just want to publish papers. I wanted to produce technologies or products that could be used in clinic to help my patients. And just to really agree with what was just said, that required a business plan, a way to bring things to market, a way to vet and validate new technologies and products. And I realized I didn't know much about that. And so the idea of spending dedicated time learning about IP translation and developing business models and really appealed to me. And in the first year of my K01, I was able to take a managing healthcare delivery course at Harvard's business school. And it was one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. And just seeing how things function within the healthcare system, how to understand the books, do some financial accounting, and also develop the beginning of business plans has been really helpful so far. So I'm thrilled to be here and to give a double thumbs up to this program.
Thank you. So both were able to talk a little bit about what you are currently doing. I'm just curious, how did you first hear about the REDI Award? And then kind of in hindsight, was there anything you wish you knew when you were putting together an application that you think would be a good piece of advice for anyone currently at the webinar? And we can start with.
Sure,
Yeah.
I can go. So my final year of residency, I'd written a very short book on how digital phenotyping or digital devices could be used in psychiatry and by extension in pain medicine. And I went through all these really cool technologies that were being developed or had already been developed, and kind of these off-the-shelf things. And Dr. Tom Insel, who's the former director of the NIMH, was one of the people I'd interviewed, who would later become my entrepreneurship mentor, my K Award. But his point was, even though all this really cool stuff exists, minus a business plan and a business model, it's never going to succeed in the marketplace, like in actual healthcare with actual patients and actual clinicians. And so I spent a chapter of that book kind of wringing my hands over who pays for what, how does that happen? And one of my advisors here at Brigham and Women's had read my book and had been thinking about this entrepreneurship and business development strategy. And it was actually, he had come across, David Ahern had come across this REDI K01 and emailed it to me saying, like, this is perfect for what you want to do. You're in pain medicine, you're treating older patients, and you want to learn more about entrepreneurship and business. Like, you should definitely apply for this. And so I had it was about a two-month turnaround time from when I got that the notice, the FOA, to when I submitted. And in the meantime, we had twins and I took my pain board. So it was a busy couple of months, but it was worthwhile in the end.
Glad you got through it.
Yeah, me too. Twins are doing well. Everyone's still mostly sane around here.
Good. Malika, do you want to talk a little bit about how you heard about REDI initially and kind of any advice for things to think about while applying?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So, there are a broad range of programs that are available, and it was really helpful that slide you showed, Joshua, and I took a screenshot of it. I think it's really nice to think about all the different opportunities that are out there, and really a lot of it involves reaching out to program officers and kind of discussing what you're interested in, and they really often understand the different funding opportunities that might be a good fit. It can help steer you. It's also helpful to do, obviously, internet searches, but it can be a little bit difficult to kind of parse out the right fit. And sometimes talking to a program officer who really is living and breathing this every day can elucidate what is the best funding pathway for you, and really understanding kind of the nitty-gritty application requirements and eligibility requirements so that you're not spinning your wheels. So I think that's how I learned about it, and that's sort of the main advice I'd offer, is to sort of start cultivating a relationship with a program officer who kind of understands what you're doing. And typically this might involve meeting a couple of program officers. So you might talk to one person who might say, well, I think what you're doing might fit better with this person. And then they would refer you, and then you'd meet with that person, and then you'd kind of talk, and then they sort of understand you, and then they can understand, well, these are 3 things that might be a good fit for you to consider applying for, et cetera. So I'd really encourage you to do that. We live in an era where somehow we've mistaken that an email correspondence is equivalent to getting to know someone. So it really is helpful to, use the email for an introduction, and then to try to get on meetings. And I've really been so fortunate to have met some really kind program officers, really helpful program officers from NIA. Maybe it has something to do with the geriatric space, but people who are kind of, drawn to that tend to be, thinking in very collaborative ways. So I'd encourage you to reach out to people and talk to them.
Daniel, did you speak to any program officers while you're putting together your application? Could you speak to that at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a little embarrassed I didn't mention that. So I remember I'd reached out not long after David had sent me the FOA. I'd reached out to the program officer who was listed, and I apologize, I'm blanking what his name was. He's no longer at the REDI program. I think he was coming from the NCI. yeah, within the week, I'd set up a meeting with him, kind of explained what I was interested in doing, what my skill set was. And he's like, yeah, you should totally apply for this. And given the turnaround, I think I've really needed that motivation. And he helped me think through strategy. And it was really valuable because it wasn't, I'd never written a grant like this before. Right. So this was a grant where obviously there's a research component, which I felt a little more comfortable with, but being able to explain that research plan within the context of a training plan, within the context of a long-term business plan, which I didn't know a whole lot about because that was the purpose of the K Award, right? That was, it was helpful to get some feedback and kind of bounce ideas. And
Great.
outside of just an email exchange, to your point, actually,
Yeah.
we had a few Zoom meetings, which were super helpful. And then Liz Neka had been my my program officer since I'd gotten the award, and she's also been really helpful thinking through things.
Malika?
Yeah, thanks, Joshua, and very helpful, Daniel. Daniel, I am blown away that you had twins and were taking your board exams and wrote a grant. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a pretty high bar for most people. So kudos. You had asked Joshua about other advice that we could offer. Would you like me to transition into some advice
Sure, that'd be great.
for people? Okay, great. So the advice that I'll offer is to people who are potentially putting in a K01 or one of the SBI or STTR REDI applications, not so much for the R25 REDI applicants. I don't know if anyone in the pool is interested in those, but it's my general sense is probably most people are interested in the K and the SBIR, so I'll focus on that. So I think there's 3 or 4 bits of advice I'm comfortable sharing, and Joshua, feel free to interrupt me, or if there's any questions about anything, feel free to interrupt me. One thing that I think is really helpful to think through carefully as part of your application is the relationship to the company that you are going to be working with. So you really want to think carefully about how that relationship is going to evolve over the 5 years or the 2 years of the award. Many times people sort of say, here's where I am right now, and this is what I'm doing right now. And then we're kind of left wondering, what will it evolve into? What will it become in the future, et cetera? So it's worthwhile to kind of map out, like, here's what I envision happening kind of in my future, in my relationship to this company. Am I going to become the chief scientific officer? Am I going to stay at a university and collaborate with the company? What's going to happen there? So that's one thing, thinking about your relationship to the company and how it's going to evolve, and just kind of spelling that out in a couple of sentences so that there's no ambiguity around that.
Yeah.
I'll just I'll just continue on. Is that okay, Joshua?
Yeah, the one thing I would just add to that for any applicants here is make it clear if you're already involved with the company at the time of application. If joining the company is contingent on receiving the award, just make that very clear to the reviewers, so there's no confusion there, that if it doesn't come off like you're not even sure if you get the award, if you would be able to join the company. So just make sure that you've had those conversations and it's clear in the award. But please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Then another thing that I think is really quite important is adequate mentorship. I mean, we all know that's important, but one thing I think that's particularly challenging about these awards, it's both challenging and an opportunity, is that you need mentors who are science mentors and also mentors who are business mentors. And there's a risk that an application may be strong with the science mentors and weak with the business mentors, or strong with the business mentors and then weak with the science mentors. So you really want to be a bit balanced in that, and try to make sure that you have a portfolio of mentors that is strong in both areas. And that kind of aligns with the letters of support point that I also wanted to bring up, which is that I often feel that letters of support are an underutilized opportunity in applications. It's great to have a letter of support that's 2 or 3 pages long that really goes into some detail if you have that opportunity, that really spells out, like in concrete terms, the level of engagement. So letters that sort of say, yes, I'm going to make my lab available, and yes, I'm going to meet with someone. Well, that's nice, but how often, and what does it mean, et cetera. And what that detail shows the reviewers is that you have really thought through this relationship. It's not like you had coffee and you kind of scribbled something on a piece of paper and that was it. So I'd encourage you to really think about those letters carefully and give them some consideration. I'll just pause there in case Joshua or anyone else has anything they'd like to add about that.
I would love to hear from Daniel how he went about selecting mentors, how managing those relationships have been.
Yeah, I was really fortunate. So the book that I'd written my last year of residency gave me essentially a survey of people who are doing things that I was interested in. And I got to meet a lot of these people, not just by email, but I also sat down with them, got to know them as humans, learned about their work, obviously. And then so when it came time to sit down and write this grant, I already essentially had my mentoring committee ready. People who were willing to spend time with me, help me think through problems. And so JP Anula, who's my research mentor, is, he'd started BWE, this digital phenotyping platform that I'm using. And so Tom Minsel is my entrepreneurship mentor, who I'd also met through writing this book. And I have longstanding relationships with both of them. And I've been really fortunate to be able to meet them and also to continue those relationships. The letters of support, there are multiple different strategies for doing those. I tended to work collaboratively with my mentors, and I would write a draft, and then they would edit it, and then they eventually uploaded it, obviously. And I found that was a very helpful way of not only agreeing on our working relationship moving forward, but also just getting the work of the letter done.
That's great. So
yeah,
follow question for you, Daniel, changing gears just a little bit. I guess, could you talk about how you think about success at the end of your award, or where you want to be, and how you communicate that in the award? And then after, from Nalika, any kind of common mistakes that you see early stage researchers make as they think about how to transition into the world of small businesses or startups? Would be really great to hear. But starting with Daniel.
It's just based on what Nalika had said about identifying one company and then transitioning into that. Like, that's something I wish I had thought more deeply on, or had the opportunity to work with a specific company. And frankly, it's something that I'm struggling to do right now. I think that my training plan was focused on coursework and then having different interactions with different startups, and I've had different opportunities already. But in terms of like transitioning into a CSO role at the end of 5 years, that wasn't really something that I had thought through, which would be very interesting. And I wish I had thought through that or had an opportunity to do that. I think a large part of what I'm trying to learn right now is both the scientific methods for the digital phenotyping, because the goal of my K award is to measure functional status in older patients with chronic pain using these digital tools. And I'm learning how to do that. I'm learning how to essentially run a research program, which is new for me. I'm also being exposed to a lot of these business courses. And so at the end of the 5 years, those are tools that I'll have gained. And I'm trying to think through now how that will crystallize into a specific role. Like whether that is by writing other grants, like within academia, like our grants, or maybe participating in R25 in some capacity, or transitioning outside of academia more into the private sector.
Great. So Joshua, I think your question to me was that process of transitioning after the award. Is that what you were asking about?
Well, just for early stage researchers, do you see any common mistakes that they make as they start thinking about getting involved in entrepreneurship or joining a small business, whether it be through an award like this or just in general?
Yeah, interesting question. I think there's a couple of thoughts. One is it's helpful to understand your institution's conflict of interest policy. So I sit on the University of Pennsylvania Conflict of Interest Committee, and we review applications from around the university, et cetera. And the rules can be a little bit complicated, like percent equity ownership, fiduciary role on a C-suite, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, it's kind of a shame to anticipate that you're going to be doing something and then find out, oops, you're not allowed to do it because of your institution's conflict of interest policy. So I've often found that the conflict of interest officers are actually, you know, quite helpful and really want to do the right, you know, guide you in the proper way, because it's in nobody's interest for someone to be unhappy about this. So I feel like sometimes we have one of these attitudes of like, let's not remove the Band-Aid because I don't want to see how bad the wound looks underneath it, approach to these things. So I would just encourage you to try to get ahead of the game a little bit and just sort of, you know, find out like, well, if I want to be on the C-suite, what does that mean for my relationship to the university? Am I allowed to do that? Can I, et cetera? And some universities allow it, some universities don't, et cetera. And then this has downstream ramifications for the academic track that you may choose. So if you're going to be on a certain track, then you know what are the benchmarks you're looking for, and can you align entrepreneurship work with that? Do you get recognition for that, et cetera? And that can help guide you in picking the right trajectory for your career development.
Thank you so much. I have more questions, but I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A with the attendees. Haley, do we have some questions from the audience?
And actually, if I could just sort of chime in one other comment
Sure.
I want to make briefly, Joshua, which is that one other thing I noticed, about these different grant applications is that sometimes the training programs that I was seeing were very strongly like business or very strongly research, and there wasn't like a sense of balance. So that's one thing you want to just be careful about. And then lastly, it's important to find the right tone in your application. So one of the major challenges in this space is that sometimes we're talking to venture capitalists and you need to be like rah, rah, rah about your project. And then other times you're talking to scientists and you need to be much more nuanced about what you're presenting. And so you're applying to a study section, you're applying to scientists, to a panel of review by scientists often. And so you do want to be very nuanced and deliberative in your application. So those are the last comments I wanted to say for consideration. So sorry, thank you for allowing me to finish that.
Yeah, no, the great pieces of advice. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of quick mechanical questions that should be quick for you to answer in terms of the letter of interest. Can you provide more details, and is it required?
The presentation moves back to the previous slide with Joshua Hook's email and QR meeting link.
Sure. So the letter of intent is not required. It's a bit of a planning. It helps us with planning for the review section. So if you intend to apply, please just fill it out. It's pretty quick. It shouldn't be more than 1 page, and that's at most. Just to give us an idea of the topic and who's going to be involved in the project so that we can help put together a panel or a review section with the right expertise.
Thank you.
But it has no influence on the ultimate score of your particular application.
Thank you. And our speakers did speak to the fact that they quickly got one in with, about 2 months to apply. Given where we are, what tips do you have for people who may be just looking at this now and trying to get to the deadline?
Maybe Daniel would be best suited to answer.
So that it was a little deceiving, that comment. I mean, the actual writing of the grant went pretty quickly, but the kernel for the scientific idea and then my mentoring committee, I wasn't starting from time equals 0, right? And so having a really well thought out, cohesive group of people that can then help you put together the training plan was what I thought was super helpful, right? So it's a research plan is something that you might be able to do by yourself, with PubMed or Google Scholar open, but defining a really good training plan that, to Josh's point, hits the entrepreneurship and research and, training goals. That's something that's really a collaborative effort that, once you've identified your mentoring group that they can help with, but you have to have identified that mentoring group first. And so these are people that I had known for months, if not a few years already, by the time I, started looking at this REDI K01. And so it came together pretty quickly because of that relationship.
Thank you. So there's been a lot of talk about the value of talking to POs. How should someone go about that? I see we have a contact list here. You can schedule a one-on-one meeting. But Josh, is there anything else you want to add there about the relationship with the PO and how to identify who's the best person?
So especially for this award, I would be the best point of contact here. So please reach out, or through email or through scheduling a video call, and I'd be happy to help there. There are a lot of websites with program officers broadly. Every program officer is going to have slightly different awards that they manage and scientific expertise. So in addition to reaching out to me, please look at some other program officers with related expertise at NIA, and they could give some feedback on the research that you're doing. And I can help point you to individuals via email or our call as well.
Great. And just to do a quick plug, we do have in chat as well as the QR code on your screen. If you point to that, you can actually schedule a 20-minute session today for another time.
I think Daniel may have had one extra thing to add.
I was just going to say, I looked through my email. It was Saroj Rejmi, who
Yes.
had been my initial contact. And I believe he was listed on the original announcement, and his email was on there. And I emailed him, and he got back to me. And I was super excited, not just to get an email in return, but then we scheduled a meeting very quickly. And so it was really efficient and very, very helpful.
Just disclaimer, Sorge is no longer at NIA, so please don't email him directly, but feel free to just send me an email as well.
I just wanted to give him credit, is why I mentioned it. Yeah, I apologize for the confusion.
No problem. We've got great team members ready to help you. Go ahead.
Just a really quick note for people who might be trying to put together an application now, especially if you're looking at the REDI SBIR or STTR award, be sure maybe look in your area and see if there are any companies that are in the space that you're interested in that already have an SBIR or STTR award. You can look that up at NIH Reporter. You could reach out to them, say something like, hey, I have this scientific background. I think I could contribute to your small business. I see you already have an SBIR award. Would you be interested in working with me to put together another SBIR award at your small business, or something along those lines? That's something to consider.
Thank you. So 2 quick questions on the funding timing and whether this will be continued. So will the REDI KO1 continue to be offered past this October deadline?
Yes, the REDI KO1 has an annual receipt date, with the next receipt date, I believe, in October of next year. The REDI SBIR STTR does not have a follow-up deadline after this October's receipt date.
If someone just applied to the September 5th deadline for the SBIR grant,
I think the connection's a little choppy on my end. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so the question is whether if someone applied for the September 5th deadline, that was just for the omnibus, can they still apply for this program?
You can still apply, but it would need to be unique aims. So you can't apply with the exact same project that you applied for the September deadline. But if you have something that's unique, but possibly still in the same general space, you could apply for the REDI SBIR as well.
Perfect, thank you. Daniel made a comment about mentorship and letters of support. Does the letter of support, can it capture a team of mentors as well? Or does it have to be just one mentor?
Just may I ask for clarification? Like, is the question asking whether multiple people can sign on to the same letter of support, or?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know the answer to that. Something like that seems like more of a the mechanics of the submission process. But from my perspective, I can tell you that I had encouraged and drafted letters of support that were mutually reinforcing, among people that knew each other, that were all willing to work together to mentor me. And, they didn't sign on to the same letter, but, they clearly noted that they were aware that I was also working with the other people on my team, and that they were happy to work as a team. But the rest of the mechanic question better be answered by someone else.
Yeah. For the REDI KO1, there needs to be a clearly identified research mentor and entrepreneurial mentor. On top of those two individuals, we are very open and encourage you to put together an entire mentorship team. But I would just be clear who is kind of the dedicated mentor in those two spaces and who's going to take the lead. So to make sure it's not one of those, if it's everyone's job to mentor you, no one mentors you, that you kind of have one primary point of contact. And the same for the REDI SBIR. For that award, you only need one dedicated mentor with some entrepreneurial experience. Make sure that that kind of lead is clearly identified, but we are very open to having multiple mentors listed on the award and multiple letters of support, and think that can strengthen the application.
Thank you. On this topic of mentors, Josh, can the mentor be from a biotech business, or does it have to be from academia only?
No, it can be from either, but we strongly encourage individuals from a biotech side, as long as it's clear that any conflict of interest has been negotiated, and that we want to see people that actually have experience in the small business world and can give you some real insight into that space.
Thank you. Now we have some specific instances of eligibility questions that we'll run through just quickly. Someone wants to know if there is a graduate student version of this program.
Fortunately, there is not. You can apply at the end of grad school as long as you anticipate having your PhD or doctoral degree prior to the estimated start time, and the general start frame is in the award notice. Thank you.
One institutional leader notes that they run a program that really helps postdocs and late-stage PhDs in immersive 6-month appointments with VC firms, with the idea that they want to better understand the landscape for startups in their field and how to translate their research. They're wondering if this would be an acceptable program to apply for this award or R25.
That sounds like a REDI R25 award. And I believe Nalika had something to add either to this comment or the previous one.
Yeah, it was actually to the previous comment, so I'll let you finish if you had anything you want to say about the one we just read.
Oh yeah, yeah, just that, at least from what was described, that would be an ideal REDI R25 application in order to provide training for graduate students or postdocs in entrepreneurship. And then, please, Nalika.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, for that question about individuals who are still doing their graduate training, potentially programs like applying to an R25 program might be an option, because the R25 programs are actually targeted, and I'm referring to applying as a trainee in the R25, not as a PI of an R25. You could apply as a trainee in the R25 because one of the goals of the R25s, specifically that the NIA wanted, is to help give you the skills and assistance to be able to put in a competitive small business grant or KO1 application, at which point hopefully you would have finished your graduate training and would be eligible.
So I would strongly encourage you to look at some of the funded R25 awards and see if you'd be eligible for those programs. You just wouldn't be applying for the R25 award itself, if that makes sense.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have folks who have a lot of experience and other degrees, but maybe not a PhD. Can you please describe whether they would be able to apply?
They could apply for the REDI SBIR STTR. As I said, the eligibility for that award could be a PhD, MD, or a master's, as long as it's kind of a terminal research degree. For the REDI KO1 award, it must be a doctoral degree, so a PhD or an MD.
Thank you. So we have some CEOs of biotechs on the line, and they'd like to know if an early stage scientist, if they're looking for someone to collaborate, and they'd like to see if that kind of person would be a good fit to be able to apply for this type of program, if they are able to get a postdoc to train, or is it only to support the postdoc, the holder of their own idea, and develop their own company? So can they train someone to work within their company, or do they have to help a postdoc develop their own idea?
It can be either, but specifically thinking of the REDI SBIR STTR, or at least I'll start there. If If they have someone at their company currently that fits within the eligibility, they can use the REDI SBIR for them to put together an award that they would be the principal investigator on and stay at the company to do that project. Or if they do have a connection with the with local research community, with a nearby university, and they know of a postdoc that's still purely on the academic side that's interested in getting involved in entrepreneurship, they could use the REDI SBIR or REDI STTR for that individual to join the company.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarity. Can someone who's a PI on a REDI grant for KO1 also be a co-PI on an SBIR grant?
Co-PI on an SBIR grant. And like
so basically,
before
someone's
the award?
already if someone's already in our system and they're already an SBIR awardee, they're a PI, can they also be a PI on a REDI KO1 grant?
No, they could not. Again, with the idea being we're looking for people looking to make that initial transition. If you're already a co-PI on an SBIR grant, they wouldn't necessarily be the target audience for these grants.
May I ask for clarification? So what if it was the opposite? What if someone like me wanted to submit an SBIR or STTR who had already gotten the KO1 and was looking to solidify it? Yeah.
You would still be eligible for the REDI SBIR or STTR because you've never, as long as you have not received a major R grant, like an R01 award.
So you still can, so in the future, he can apply for an SBIR grant.
For the REDI SBIR, yeah.
Perfect. Well, those are the questions we've received thus far. I want to thank Dr. Gunaratne, Dr. Barron, and Joshua for taking time to give more insight on these opportunities and to really dig in on the eligibility and how you've leveraged them and how they've been valuable to you.
Logo, ready, text, thank you. A QR code appears to the top right.
I do want to make a plug that we would really want you to schedule those one-on-one meetings, because if you have more questions, we want to help you get and submit a successful application. And then Josh, do you want to chat a little bit about what we're going to do the next hour in case anyone wants to hang on? I know there are going to be some new people joining.
Yeah, especially for graduate students potentially that might be interested in learning more about entrepreneurship. In this next segment, we're going to be talking about the REDI R25 award. So this is an award that generally someone at a institute, whether it's a university or an accelerator or something like that, can create a program to provide entrepreneurial training with the target audience being graduate students or postdocs.
Fantastic. So if you're interested in that topic, please stay on the line. Please also fill out our feedback form and schedule your one-on-one meeting today, as well as get those letters of intent in. All right, Josh, are you ready? Round two.
Yes. I'll go to the next slide. There we go.
Text, the webinar will begin shortly. Questions and comments. Share questions and comments in the chat window on the right side of your screen. Questions will be reviewed during the Q&A period. Closed captioning. Please click CC on the menu bar. Zoom technical support, 1-888-799-99666 extension 2, or support.zoom.us/HC/EN-US. Feedback. Please tell us what you thought of this webinar at https://forms.g/ub1d49xdcdyj m.7. Follow us on Twitter at NIASBIR. Follow us on LinkedIn, NIA Office of Small Business Research.
Great. Thank you for those who've been on with us, and for those who are newly joining us, we welcome you. The webinar will begin shortly, and we want this to be an interactive session. So please use the Q&A feature to send us your questions. There will be a dedicated Q&A period where we'll respond. I also want to encourage you to pop out the chat feature on your computer or your phone. That will allow you to be able to see some of the links that we're providing. If you're not able to do that, please note that we'll be sending some links via email, and we also have everything on our website. We are offering closed captioning and Zoom technical support. And we do also want to make sure that you follow us on our social channels noted here on X and LinkedIn, as well as please take a few minutes to just open up the feedback form and keep it on. And then as soon as you're done with this session, please fill that out. It really helps us to plan for the future and to look at what you need to get from us to help you be more successful in your applications.
Text, REDI R25, Entrepreneurship Enhancement Award, Joshua Hooks, PhD, Program Officer, Office of Strategic Extramural Programs, Nation Institutes of Health.
With that, we welcome you to learn more about the REDI R25 Entrepreneurship Enhancement Award.
Good afternoon again, everybody. I really appreciate you joining the webinar. In the second half of the webinar, we'll be focusing on the REDI R25 Award, or the Entrepreneurship Enhancement Award.
Text, Agenda, Introduction and Objectives, REDI R25 Overview, Guest REDI Awardees, Moderated Q&A. Please use the Q&A function on your viewer dashboard to submit questions at any time during the presentation.
Just a quick overview. I'll start with just some kind of introduction, going over the R25 Award in kind of broad strokes. We'll then transition to a panel with some guest REDI awardees, specifically recipients of the REDI R25 Award. And then we'll hopefully be able to answer your questions that you submit via the Q&A and chat box at this webinar.
Text, Featured Speakers, Joshua Hooks, PhD, REDI Program Lead, Office of Strategic Extramural Programs, National Institute on Aging, National Institutes of Health, Daniel Barron, MD, PhD, Director of the Pain Intervention and Digital Research Program, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard University, REDI K01 Awardee, Trivia Frazier, PhD, President and CEO Obitala Sciences, REDI R25 Awardee, Monique LaRoque, MPH, Senior Vice President Ogilvy Health, Moderator, Nalaka Gunaratna, MD, DABSM Associate Professor of Medicine, Genetics, University of Pennsylvania, REDI R25 Awardee.
So with that, as I previously mentioned, we talked about the REDI K01 and the REDI SBR and STTR award. For this award, we're primarily focused on the REDI R25 award, or the Entrepreneurship Enhancement Award. That application is due on October 18th, and we request a letter of intent 30 days prior. And I'll go into exactly what to include in that letter of intent later. The REDI Award, it provides $250,000 per year in direct costs for up to 5 years of funding. So the purpose of the REDI R25 is to promote the development of entrepreneurial education programs to broaden the skill sets of graduate students and postdocs. Similar to the REDI K01 award, we welcome applications that kind of take a wide or broad definition of entrepreneurship. So your program can focus on things like product development, commercialization, but also things like science communication, science policy. And we're really interested in creating programs to develop skill sets of trainees in all of these spaces. Critically, applications must include a diversity recruitment plan, so a plan on how they're going to make their program kind of accessible and available for a wide pool of potential trainees. There's broad eligibility for who can apply. This can include universities, accelerators, for-profit and nonprofit organizations, anyone that's interested in kind of educating the next generation of scientific researchers and scientific innovators. And we encourage applicants to partner or to utilize existing NIH or federally funded resources and programs, things like the I-Corps program, using what we call reach hubs, research and evaluation and commercialization hubs, and other resources like that to really strengthen the programs that they propose. So again, the REDI R25 supports creative educational activities with primary focus on research experiences, courses and skill development, mentoring activities, or curriculum methods and development. But really for the REDI R25, we're focused in on these courses for skill development. And in developing that course for skill development, you can utilize some of those other focus areas as well. The target for the REDI R25 must be graduate students and or postdocs. But in addition, they can allow for participation by undergraduates or even junior faculty as appropriate, but it must include graduate students and postdocs as a target audience as well. Applicants are encouraged to propose collaborations with scientific and business departments as well, and consider collaborations with local institutes that could be local small businesses, startups, spin-outs from the university, or other partners that they are in collaboration with. So again, the award is up to 5 years of funding. You can request up to $250,000 in direct costs annually. So each year can be up to $250,000. And the application is due on October 18th. And please submit a letter of intent by September 18th. The review criteria for an R25 award, again, we're evaluating the significance. So does the program provide opportunities to mentees for a career in entrepreneurship? And again, taking that broad definition of entrepreneurship. And just to build out on that a little bit, we want to see how you are creating a program that is unique to the area that you're in. So if there already are programs that help with drug discovery in your area, we'd like to see you talk about, you feel like in this entrepreneurial training ecosystem, there's a missing piece here, and how are you uniquely suited to fill in that missing space for the trainees in your area? We want to see who the investigators are on the award. Do they have the appropriate expertise in order to increase participants' entrepreneurial skill sets? We want to look at the innovation of your program. So what are you doing that's unique compared to what's around you? And how are you proposing to reach your targeted audience? We really want to see novelty in the approach. So will the program, how well have you stated your goals? How are you evaluating your program at the end to know if you've achieved those goals? Whether that be allowing for the participants to better understand entrepreneurship broadly or specifically around science communication or drug development. Are there deliverables? Are there ways that you check in with the participants at the end or even following the completion of your program? And just making sure that it's very clearly stated. And finally, looking at the environment. Do you have the appropriate facilities and personnel in order to accomplish the goals of your program? So some high-level tips for the REDI R25 award. Make it clear that the program aligns with NIA's mission. So just a reminder for all of these awards, they are funded by the National Institute on Aging. So we do want to see its connection with aging research and Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. It can be kind of anywhere within that space. It doesn't have to focus on Alzheimer's disease. That's just a high priority area for NIA. But we're interested in any techniques and researchers that can improve the state of healthy aging. And to that effect, make sure that you have expertise involved in the program that can talk about things like age tech, dementia, Medicare, topics that are relevant for older adults. Know your audience for who's going to participate in the program. So while we say the program needs to focus on graduate students and or postdocs, we realize those are two different populations and may have slightly different needs. If you are targeting both graduate students and postdocs, how will you make sure that the program works well for both groups? And how are you being mindful of other commitments that they have either to their research lab or to academic coursework and things like that? And so to that effect, how much time will your target audience have to dedicate to the program? Make sure it is reasonable within their other commitments. And then again, is this program for people that already have kind of explored entrepreneurship to some extent, or is this for people that would be truly brand new to entrepreneurship or to science communication? And how does that reflect in how you've designed your program? Finally, be clear on the goals of your program. Make sure that you have clear, measurable program outcomes that you can clearly articulate to the reviewers. And then kind of be clear on how you're determining what it means to be successful. Is it number of people? Are you trying to create a very deep program for a smaller number of people? And just make that very clear. And then finally, going to that kind of diverse recruitment plan, make sure that the program is accessible for students of all backgrounds. In the sense of make sure that you can conduct outreach for the program and make it available for people maybe at the nearby universities, at minority serving institutes, in both rural and urban areas and different things like that.
Text, questions and next steps. Have specific questions about your potential REDI application? Reach out via email or set up a one-on-one meeting to discuss in more detail. Joshua Hooks, PhD. Joshua.hooks@nih.gov. A QR code appears to the right with linked text. Book a 20-minute meeting.
So with that, please put in your questions in the Q&A box, and you can use this QR code here to set up a 20-minute meeting with myself, and so that we can discuss your particular proposal in more detail.
Text, deadline reminder, letter of intent, September 18, 2023, as soon as possible. Brief letter outlining, descriptive title, PD, PI, other key personnel, i.e., mentors, participating institution, number and title of this funding opportunity. Send to NIA Small Business at mail.nih.gov. Application, October 18, 2023.
Reminder that a letter of intent is due on September 8th, but really as soon as possible. Again, the letter of intent is a very short document that should briefly outline kind of a descriptive title of your program, who the principal investigator, who's kind of submitting this award, who the key personnel will be, what institute you're affiliated with and what partners you have, and then the exact funding opportunity that you're responding to. This generally should not be more than a page in length, and just email that to NIA Small Business by September 18th so that we can get a sense of the volume of applications and the type of applications to put together a relevant review panel. If you are unable to submit this letter of intent, please still submit an application if you have a strong program. This is not required. It just helps us with the planning of the review of these applications. And with that, I'd like to start the kind of small panel where I'll interact with two awardees. I'm really happy to have with us Dr. Trivia Frazier, who's the president and CEO of Abatala Sciences and a REDI R25 awardee, and Dr. Nalika Gunaratne, who is the associate professor of medicine and geriatrics at the University of Pennsylvania, and also REDI R25 awardee. And hopefully this time we can talk in a little bit more detail on that exact R25 program you have. But thank you both for joining us. I'll let you both introduce yourself and give just a little bit of background on yourself and where you work and what you're doing. If we want to start with Dr. Frazier.
Thank you, Joshua, and thank you everyone who is attending. I do sincerely appreciate the opportunity to share our experience and background with everyone here, and hopefully it will yield some awardees that have attended this webinar. But my name is, as you've indicated, Trivia Frazier. I'm the president, co-founder, and CEO of Abatala Sciences. My background starts off with academia, where I am focused on adipose biology and regenerative medicine for my career, and did training within the world of tissue engineering using adipose-derived stromal stem cells to regenerate adipose tissue for topical wound therapy and related medical disorders. The shift occurred for me from academia to biotech after stepping into administrative role within the context of leadership within academia. I then switched and transitioned to performing research and looking at the goal of translating what we were doing in that regenerative medicine realm and in the tissue engineering realm to something that is a commercialized product. And that truly was an entrance into this world of, the transition from the bench to, it's coined the bedside, but really to products that get out there and that are able to make an impact in the world. And so I pursued my MBA and had the opportunity to spin out Abatala Sciences with my co-founders, Dr. Jeffrey Gimble and Dr. Ziying Wu. And we have been fortunate to work together on this REDI award, but also to pursue the other technologies that we're commercializing at the company, which is essentially generating adipose-derived constructs or models, adipose tissue models of patients of varying demographics to facilitate research within the areas of obesity, diabetes, and related metabolic disorders.
Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Nalika?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. My name's Nalika Gunaratne. I'm an associate professor of medicine, and I work as a physician and researcher in the areas of geriatrics and sleep disorders. My career, much like Trivia's, was also somewhat of a traditional academic career for quite a long time. And then I started exploring the entrepreneurship space more as I began to realize the tremendous potential that it held for implementing discoveries from the the research space and moving them into patient care, which is really the purpose of a lot of what we're trying to do. And I've really been very excited about that opportunity. And I think programs like REDI and others are really great examples of the increasing understanding that the NIH has about the importance of this kind of implementation. I'm also really very passionate about education. I love working with these bright and talented students, and sometimes I feel like I'm a student half the time when I'm listening to some of these conversations and people are discussing things. I've been able to put together a free ebook on the topic of academic entrepreneurship, and I'll just put that link in the chat in case anyone is interested as well. And that's really been a great journey, kind of assembling these 60+ chapters on this topic. And so I think the R25 program is a really phenomenal vehicle that allows us to kind of support these really valuable education programs. And I've really enjoyed working on this project. Thanks.
Great. Let's see, just to start, tell me a little, could you both tell me a little bit about kind of high-level goals of your specific program and who it's tailored to? Who generally are the participants, both in terms of kind of research background, but also, research background and where in the country? Like, are these local programs? Are these national programs? And how do you recruit for those individuals? We can start with trivia.
Yeah, sure. So our program is focused on really bridging the gap, that missing piece in terms of information for research scientists who are either working within academia, pursuing their professional development. They are graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, or they are working within the industry, within different career segments. So maybe a researcher that has transitioned to a project management role within a biotech company. And they are individuals who are looking to learn more about business and what it means to commercialize a technology, what it means to apply their research to industry and where those opportunities are. And on the other side, we are also working to address a gap for those individuals who are within industry who want to learn more about the research side. So how, is there an opportunity to continue to pursue additional opportunities to either commercialize technologies or learn about the research side of things in a way that is conducive to either doing their own startup or continuing to sort of grow within the workplace, as the identified need within our region has been workforce development. And so, I think one of the things that Nalika mentioned, we also have a passion for supporting and promoting the development of the student, of the person, as it's a continual learning process for all of us at all stages throughout the company. And so this funding mechanism is really a tremendous way for us to work towards bridging that gap, because we've been able to leverage partnerships with university partners, with industry partners, to say, here's how people across those sectors get exposure to these things that they've been asking about. The academician, I do remember my time as a graduate student and as a postdoctoral fellow, not knowing that the intellectual property piece is very important. And Nalika sort of brought that up earlier when with the conflict of interest disclosure and Office of Technology Transfer, those pieces, knowing that awareness, and this sort of bridges that gap. So our goal there is focusing on those individuals on both sides of that coin.
Great.
Yeah, and I think I would echo a lot of what Trivia has brought up, which is that really these grants are about training the workforce and targeting individuals who kind of are at that phase in their career where they're exploring transitions and haven't invested a lot of sunken costs, so to speak, in a one specific career path and can't explore other options. It's kind of fascinating to look back on my own career and kind of realize, oh, I actually had a lot more free time back then than I realized, and I don't have much time now. I wish I'd explored these things earlier. So it's really, we want to try to catch people at that kind of juncture where they're kind of open to some of these possibilities and can explore that. And in regards to where we recruit from, our initial cohort has been a bit more local, but we're exploring options to expand that and really get more of a national cohort. And I think really a lot of the virtual meeting technology, while of course it's kind of the bane of our existence, we have countless Zoom meetings, of course, every day, all of us, but nonetheless, it does still allow us to really engage. And as Joshua mentioned, being able to connect with more rural and kind of broadly established groups is important. We're currently exploring using LinkedIn as a tool for trying to engage with trainees. More and more people are, putting profiles up on LinkedIn, so that's been valuable as well.
Yes, thank you for addressing that question as well. Josh, you did. As from a recruitment standpoint, we're starting out locally, and really to echo, I think, Nalika's points there with respect to accessibility through the virtual platform. That is essentially our mechanism. So we're able to then cast a broader net from a national perspective, where our goal has been to look at Southeast region and then sort of expand it beyond there.
Could you both speak about the kind of initial recruitment period and kind of where you are in your awards so far and what that experience has been like?
Yeah, so the initial recruitment really was a combination of tools, I would say, on the marketing front, where some of this traditional social media sort of based outreach, like, here's something that Obatala is committed to as a community partner, and also that our partnering universities are committed to, something that we would encourage, some interest and really consideration for folks who are at this stage in their careers. The other piece is word of mouth. We assembled a team that is a part of our advisory board that is able to then share with their team. And that advisory board is individuals across different sectors, from academia, those who are running centers that are within the aging, to academic, those who are at the stage of curriculum development within those institutions, to other biotech companies that are based here locally, and asking the folks who are serving as our advisory board members to then serve as internal champions for their respective institutions, to say, here's a program that may be beneficial for you as an individual, as you've sort of identified what your metrics are, what your goals are. And that has helped us to really reach, you can say, a cohort, a size that meets our goals. We wanted to start it off with a manageable size, with formulating relationships initially, focusing on that, ensuring that those foundational elements are put in place, and that we're really giving consideration to the points that were of importance. If we're working to address a workforce, the workforce needs within our sector, and we're also looking to recruit and provide support to individuals from traditionally underrepresented and underinvested backgrounds, we need to be intentional about providing those resources to those partners, hearing them out and seeing how we can actually execute on this. And so that stage is essentially, we were able to fine tune the programming so that it does address many of those points, and we hope all of those points to a great degree, of getting 10 people enrolled in the first year and sort of the next year growing thereafter.
Great. And then could you just clarify, Trivia, you're about starting your first year with participants, correct?
Yes, we're starting our first year with participants. We have a self-paced programming that is amenable to, supporting or complementary to the work, the folks that are working full time within their various programs or at their respective institutions. And so a self-paced, newly launched program looking for enrollment that ends up being something that's managed within the professional, adult, and career center at the university called the PACE program. And so we're in that stage of the kickoff.
That's great. And that's just one, before I switch over to Nalika, just to emphasize for the attendees, you can take that first year for kind of building the infrastructure of the award, and we're very open to that. And if that's, and that will not negatively impact your application at all. But we'd love to hear from you, Nalika, as well.
Great, yeah, thank you. So I think, I think what Trivia said makes a lot of sense and is really helpful guidance. And we have also found that since we're targeting trainees, that there's often program directors for training programs, and then connecting with those individual program directors and really getting to know them. So like just like one email to a program director, that often doesn't go very far, but then having a meeting and then maybe a follow-up meeting that can sort of help establish a connection, and then they can share the announcement to their trainees, and that definitely has been quite helpful with increasing interest and involvement. And then the other thing that we've really been doing a lot is having one-on-one meetings that are informational meetings with applicants. And I really have a lot of fun with these. I really enjoy talking to these applicants. It's, they're just amazingly bright and motivated people. And it's very important, as Trivia was saying, that these be somewhat personalized curriculums. So, this is not like, the SAT program where there's like 100,000 people from around the country applying for something, right? These are a very kind of like targeted group of individuals who have an interest in neuroscience and cognitive decline and aging and kind of bridging academia and career. So it's a very small group of people, and really kind of cultivating those relationships is very valuable. Really understanding where they see themselves in 5 years. How can we visualize how this program can help them get there? And so we are trying to take a much more kind of personalized approach, and that's been something I've really been enjoying about this R25 program. I'm one of the associate directors in our master's programs here at UPenn, and that's a much more regimented approach where we have 10 classes. You got to take 8 of them, yada yada yada, and obviously that serves students, but this is something different, and I think it's important to kind of recognize that. So that's sort of the approach we've been trying to take as well.
Thank you. And I know you both have touched on it, but just to ask it in a more direct question. So I think in the case of Trivia, you're more from a business that is working with graduate students and postdocs. Nalika more from the university side, and expand. Could you speak maybe challenges, Trivia, maybe finding academic partners if there were any, and Nalika forming collaborations with small businesses or entrepreneurial people outside of your background, if that was true?
Yes, I'd be happy to speak to that. So one of the challenges that surfaced was it's built off of the approach to forming the partnerships. Our start was, speaking with individuals whom we had already been collaborating with, who are working in their respective departments, their respective roles within different academic institutions or even other companies. And, there would unanimously be support across the board with those respective individuals. However, establishing an agreement formally with the university requires a different level of buy-in and time and effort that needs to be allocated to getting those documents in place. And so, having that knowledge of how to navigate that in the way of the different institutions and how they would approach putting in those, CEAs or those appropriate agreements, that was, one of the areas that I think did require additional time and effort above and beyond sort of the collaborators who are able, willing, ready to support us, and ensuring that the bandwidth that they needed in terms of the hours and reporting that to the university, all of that information was covered. So working with the different partners, I will say, taking the time to appreciate the requirements for each of those university partners. For the biotech companies that we're working with, they range from companies our size, smaller, all the way up to some very large international companies. And again, knowing who to talk to say, we need to put this documentation in place. Having an internal champion across the board does help. But that is one thing. And for us in particular, we as a company, we do have a formal agreement in place with the university that is unique in a sense. It's not very common to find that there is somewhat of an incubator that is residing on a university campus. That is, the mechanism that we are able to say we're building off of an existing relationship, an existing partnership. But what had to be put in place was a separate document, a separate agreement specifically for this, because our goal is then to say, university partner, take this on as it grows, as the curriculum expands. Ideally, this is something that continues, and it really does make that impact over time beyond what we're able to initially kick off. And it really expanded, hopefully, to all of your researchers that are matriculating through the adjacent programs, or even within their business schools. And so that piece is crucial to, essentially have the foundational element. And I think moving forward, it helps to make things go by a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah, for sure. Malika, could you speak to your experience kind of forming partnerships and things like that? Yeah,
that's a great question. As everybody knows, universities are just awesome partners for businesses, not. That has definitely been a bit of a challenge. And one of the things that we have found a lot of success with is working with technology transfer offices that already have companies that are working with the university in some capacity. So UPenn, for example, does have an innovation center, which kind of does actually get in pretty deeply involved with companies, and so that facilitates connecting with a pool of companies. And then as we work with different students at different universities, we try to make sure we kind of engage with their technology transfer office. And one of the things that is very important that we have to emphasize repeatedly in the meetings is that we don't take any IP stake, that the IP stays with the individual's home institution and with the individual, that UPenn will not dip its fingers into those waters. So that has helped to kind of reassure some of the business partners. Really, we're here to kind of support them. And then I think that really mapping out a plan, like what exactly can we offer as a deliverable that the student is obtaining as they finish their training. Are they going to be making a pitch deck? Are they going to be writing a small business grant? Are they going to be mapping out target market size, competitive landscape? Then that helps the business really grok what is going to be the benefit of this partnership, and that's been quite helpful.
Great. Kind of building off that comment, so we certainly don't require it to look any kind of way, but in addition to providing didactic pieces and lectures on entrepreneurship for the participants, we encourage you to kind of invest in the students in a sense and use some of that money for really building them as entrepreneurs. Can you speak about certifications, IP generation, some things that they will get and be able to use in their career as a result of going through your programs? And we can flip the order this time, start with Malika.
Yeah, absolutely. So your question is like, what do students tangibly get from
Mhm.
the program? And that's a great question. And you know, frankly, it's very helpful in the discussions with the students to say, you know, here's the exact tangible you're getting. You know, just sort of saying education is a very kind of broad thing. So we have travel funds for them to attend a conference, and that has been kind of a nice way for students to sort of, you know, clearly see like this, here's a very tangible benefit. And then we also try to encourage networking opportunities. And then, like I mentioned before, we kind of create like an individual plan with each student of like, here's a specific goal of, or the document you want to have at the end of this program. And then the students kind of can see what the tangible outcome is from the program. We're also exploring like a certificate kind of pathway that students can have something which they can then, you know, put on their LinkedIn page, or they can use for their, you know, future job interviews or discussions with VCs, et cetera. That is a little bit of a delicate dance with the university, because, you know, universities very protectively guard their degree programs, but you know, some universities are comfortable offering certificates. So the master's and the undergrad degrees, those are like the, you know, tuition-based things, but certificates can be more flexible. So you have to kind of figure out with your own individual university what they're willing to allow you to offer. But students really do benefit from having some, you know, piece of paper or acknowledgement of having done a program, and it can be a draw, especially in this sort of competitive landscape where they need to differentiate themselves and demonstrate credibility.
Yeah, that, so I'll say there's a commonality with respect to activities that we are supporting. One is on the front of the travel that Nalika mentioned, with respect to traveling to conferences that are appropriate or applicable within the research area. For us, it was important to incorporate opportunities with our business partners, our industry partners, for the students to get internship opportunities, exposure to, you know, what it is that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, even if it's a short commitment, which is, you know, ideally what we're able to get that counts towards some timing that they would put in the course, one of the courses that they're taking. And we mapped out essentially a pathway to 2 certifications, an initial stage certificate for the first 3 courses, and a second stage, if you will, that incorporates some of the more, you know, the more complicated elements with respect to GMP manufacturing, or that stage of understanding from an operational standpoint, the risk management, all those elements that go beyond the initial sort of, here are the challenges of starting a business, you know, here are the challenges of identifying the minimum viable product, those types of things. And that mechanism, just as Nalika, you know, mentioned, that took some time for us to figure out, as, you know, we looked at the partnering school within the university that would be willing to embark on that curriculum development piece with us. And it ended up being that professional, adult, and continuing education school PACE that is already offering certifications, certificates that are, you know, very focused curriculum. And so it fits right in line with that self-paced environment, online programming with some in-person, you know, components, whereby a culminating event is pitching who they are, you know, pitching themselves. And so they get exposure to some of those fundamentals that could apply, whether they're deciding to go on and start their own business, continuing to work within their existing, you know, biotech or academic environment to say, here's who I am, you know, articulating that in a way that is fully digestible within a short period of time, which is, of course, very translatable to the business environment. So we want them to, you know, get exposure to the business as sort of that tangible piece to say, you know, here's a culminating sort of set of activities that I've done, a certificate as an option, you know, if that's something they want to do. And then the last piece that we're working on that may go online later on in the year or next year would be that industry-based credential that is recognized. And so the certificate that they get to be able to say, here's the level, by which this particular certificate should be recognized throughout, no matter whether I work here in Louisiana or in somewhere else throughout the nation. So that piece is going to take some additional timing, but that is a goal.
Great. One thing I'll just quickly add to it. And so I'm hearing like certificates, travel budgets, going to conferences, all these sorts of great things. One thing just to consider for any applicants listening is stipends for the participants, to the extent that they are engaged in maybe working with a small business, providing some stipend for the hours that they work or for those sorts of activities is something that the award certainly allows for, and is encouraged. I know we need to switch over to the kind of open Q&A in a moment, but any final tips, advice, or thoughts from either Trivia or Nalika?
Yeah, one thing that I heard on the previous Q&A that I think is very valuable and consistent here, it applies here, is reaching out to the program officer in advance, reaching out to you, reaching out to members from within the NIA that can address questions earlier on, I think is invaluable. The other thing, so the comment that you just made about the stipends, we found ourselves in a situation where we were choosing between sort of paying stipends or paying tuition. And, one of the things that was made very clear was that if we do have a goal of making the programming and the coursework more accessible to individuals who traditionally would have challenges accessing the curriculum, that that is one way to address that. And so I definitely agree with that very strongly, that either of those scenarios supports that, but to keep that in mind for the applicants, that the structure of the programming, if your goal is to truly reach individuals who may have difficulty accessing it otherwise, it may have to include some of those elements that would make it more accessible, and just leading with that, keeping that up front.
Thank you. Nalika?
Yeah, I think one other bit of general advice that I would offer, having been on the study sections that's looked at some of these R25s, is that as you're writing your grant application, to just be a little bit careful of the curse of knowledge, so to speak, which is that you, as the person writing the grant, you know your institution, all the crazy acronyms that academia loves to come up with, and for somebody reading your grant and 5 other grants, it can really be a bit overwhelming, seeing all kinds of acronyms and names, throughout the grant application. And then that can be hard for a reviewer to really understand what's happening. So, it's really important to kind of, as you're writing, try to be a bit careful about the acronym soup that we often have a tendency to do, because it kind of, saves on the space and we can squeeze more things in there. It's really nice to have, figures that might explain the institutional landscape and the different groups that are connecting, so that a reviewer can kind of look at that pretty quickly and figure it out, and then can understand the different pieces of your application. These are 25-page long grant applications, right? So a reviewer is reading 25 pages of single-spaced 11-point Arial font here, and reading 5 of these. So anything that you can do to reduce the reviewer burden might be to your benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, go ahead, Monique.
Thank you, Josh. I'm just going to thank you all for all of your expertise and knowledge on this particular grant. We have received a number of questions from our audience, and we want to make sure to get into some of those questions as well. So this is related to someone who's submitted, they said they've already submitted their grant application. They were trying to set up a one-on-one, but can they discuss after submit, or should they just wait until they hear back from the review? Just want to make sure that they understand the process.
Reach out to me after, we can discuss. Yeah, definitely set up a meeting to discuss, and we can sort out how to do any changes that might result from the discussion.
Thank you very much. The next question relates to the R25 and the classroom style course, as folks have been describing. They'd like to focus more on the experiential part of the learning, and they wanted to know whether they can include that in the proposal. For example, appointment with the VC firm, and have more of that experiential part be more of the focus. Is that a possibility? Would that disqualify them?
No, that is certainly a possibility, and we strongly encourage experiential pieces and kind of hands-on pieces such as that.
Perfect. And related to this question, the plan for instruction has a lot of things that relate to research specifically, like subject matter, conflict of interest, authorship, data management, human subjects, and animal use. Does this have to be covered in the course if they're framing their course to look more at entrepreneurship specific content areas and translational research areas?
Referring specifically to the responsible conduct of research, or did the person say?
No, they were just looking at the plan for instruction.
Oh, and it should be tailored to this particular program, so to the entrepreneurial goals that they have in the program.
Perfect. And I would strongly encourage folks to set up that one-on-one to just kind of outline what you're thinking of including and make sure that it aligns with the intent of the opportunity.
And Nalika, I believe you had something to say.
Yeah, I think experiential learning, as you mentioned, Joshua, is really, really valuable. And I think from the reviewer's point of view, who's reviewing a grant application, they'd want to see that you've given this, that it's well thought out. It's not just one of these things where we're going to call up some companies and our students are going to be placed in there kind of thing. You need to, really think about like, non-disclosure agreements. What are the kind of expectations, the time commitment? Do you have any track record of being successful with this in the past? How will you ensure that they get a, diverse background or training, that it's meaningful? So it requires a lot of thought, but it can be extremely valuable.
Perfect. And on that related note, you mentioned NDA, non-disclosure agreement. If someone is supported under this particular funding opportunity, the question is, does what their output in terms of what's being created, does that have to be shared publicly, or can it remain private within the organization sponsoring institution?
So the individual applicants' information or any IP, that they do not have to disclose that. They would just need to talk about general program outcomes.
Perfect. That's it. Thank you very much. So there's a question about how this particular funding opportunity is different than the T32 funding opportunity. For those who don't know, T32, it's another type of research award. Josh, I have some information on it if you'd like me to, but if you want to speak to that, please feel free.
Yeah, speaking in just kind of broad terms, T32 generally allows for offsetting tuition and providing some salary for graduate students and postdocs. Generally kind of broader programs, typically focused on research, but there can be some variation. REDI R25, it provides the $250,000 per year, primarily for stipend, not for salary. And then every R25, again, there's a lot of different versions of it, similar to there's a lot of different versions of the T32 program. This one specifically being focused on providing entrepreneurial training, or kind of non-academic skill training. I don't care if either of the guest awardees have anything to add to that. I don't know if either of you have experience with T32s.
Yeah, so in regards to the T32, all I can say is there's 200 pages less of tables in an R25.
That's a good point to bring up as well.
Yeah, my T32 was about 450 pages long, and so that was a lot of fun.
I think that sums it up quite well.
All right, well, thank you. So for applicants who will be successful, where money of support will arrive, how does the company get the money? Does it go to their bank account? Does it go to the fellow, the university account? Can you please describe that process?
Sorry, for which award?
So who does the funding go to? Does it go directly to the student, the institution?
So for the REDI R25, it's going to go to the institution that's applying with the PI listed. Generally, that's true for that's going to be true for the REDI SBIR, STTR. It goes, the award is made to the small business in those cases.
Thank you. And we received another question related to NDAs and IP, intellectual property. If they disclose information about their product or idea in the grant document, would it create an IP protection issue?
Again, I'm assuming this has to do with the REDI SBIR, STTR awards, in which case they should only share what they're comfortable sharing on those applications and not disclose anything that might be an early disclosure as far as IP or patents are concerned. That said, I would encourage applicants to be sure to share as much as possible, share enough that a reviewer can accurately assess your project and determine if it's novel and impactful. So don't hide so much that no one can appropriately review the application.
Perfect, thank you. And then we've gotten a couple questions about who's the appropriate contact. Joshua Hooks is here and with you now. He is ready to meet with you. We do have one-on-one meeting opportunities, as well as you can send an email. And we'll flash that contact information for you as well.
The presentation moves back to the questions and next step slide with Joshua Hook's email and the QR meeting code.
Those are the open questions we have. We wanted to just remind you that we would like your feedback. So please fill out our feedback form and then use the QR code or the link in chat to schedule a one-on-one meeting with Josh Hooks. He is very thorough and will help you think through, is this appropriate? What makes a successful application, and be able to provide more customized feedback as well.
Logo, ready, text, thank you. A QR code appears in the top right.
So for our speakers, Dr. Fraser and Dr. Gurotny, do you have any final words of wisdom for our potential applicants?
Okay, I was going to let you go, Nanaka. I would say for a number of things that were raised in terms of points, consider communication as much as possible in the way of reaching out to Josh, reaching out to folks. If you have a question, I think it goes without any replacement or alternative. A direct conversation can get you a bit further in terms of, addressing those questions that you may not even realize you have as questions, and then starting out with the ones in terms of just sharing that you're thinking about applying to the program, and then taking the time to be very thoughtful in the approach, as Nalaka mentioned earlier, I think is invaluable with respect to giving consideration to the overall goals of the NIA for this particular funding mechanism, and just determining if that's aligned with your goals for your institution, your goals in addressing a gap that is there. I think if those things match up, you have some strong chances of being successful in your application.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. And I think the one thing I would add, this has really been a phenomenal presentation. I would have been really helpful for me when I was writing my R25. So kudos to Joshua and Todd and the others for organizing the session. It'll help you a lot. I think the one other thing I would add is letters of support. So this grant is really about an ecosystem in many ways, and so it's not occurring in a vacuum. And there's really a lot of letters of support. I think we had like 10 to 20 letters of support in our application, for example. And these letters, you don't write them overnight. You have to really be thinking about them and working with the person who is going to be providing that assistance and really kind of mapping out what their role is going to be in the project, et cetera. So, we were working on the letters of support kind of concurrently with the actual writing of the grant. It's not something we kind of save till the end, is kind of what I'm getting at. Because it can often take a couple of weeks to get these back and to make sure they align with everything else. So that's sort of the one thing I would recommend. A typical R01, you might have 2 or 3 or 4 letters of support or something like that, K grant or something. But with these, there's a lot more letters of support.
Fantastic, thank you. And there was one other question that came in under the wire. I think it relates more to the SBIR funding opportunity, Josh, so just to give you a heads up on that. So there's a new LLC which is applying for the SBIR with an affiliation with the university. And I know we get this question often, but is there a PhD or MD requirement for the founders of the LLC when applying for the SBIR version of this?
For the REDI SBIR, they must have either kind of a terminal research degree, so that could be an MD, a PhD, or a master's. Generally for SBIR and STTR applications, there is no degree requirement.
Perfect, thank you. And if you missed our previous session, I will get that online, but also feel free to schedule a one-on-one with Josh Hooks.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of the panelists, and thank you for attending.
Good luck on your applications, get them in.